I'm dying. My mother, Eleanor, is a world-renowned oncologist specializing in stomach cancer. Yet I developed the disease right under her nose. Every time I told her I wasn't feeling well, she just scoffed and told me to stop acting because my performance was pathetic. My oldest brother, Pierce, is a detective. He has protected countless citizens in this city, but he never protected me. He stood by and watched as kidnappers drag me away. My second brother, Nikolai, is a medical examiner. I once texted him, "When I die, will you perform my autopsy to prove I wasn't lying?" He replied with a single word: dirty. So, after I died, my lawyer father, Richard, found the severance papers I left behind. There was only one blank line left, the one for his signature. He frowned and ripped the documents to shreds. Even in death, he refused to let me go. I walked out of the hospital, utterly hollowed out, staring down at the medical report in my hands. Late-stage stomach cancer. The cancer cells were already metastasizing. When it rains, it pours. I learned that the hard way. Lost in my thoughts, I accidentally bumped into a teenage boy. I quickly closed my report, apologized, and turned to leave. He caught a glimpse of the hospital paperwork in my hand and looked at me with pure sympathy. "It's okay." I walked home in a daze. As night fell, my family's house glowed with warm, cozy lights in the distance. Too bad, none of those lights were meant for me. I stood outside the door, listening to the laughter and cheer inside. The moment I pushed the door open, the house fell into a dead silence. Eleanor turned around, her eyes flashing with anger. "You knew today was Alicia's birthday, yet you came home this late. Are you intentionally trying to ruin our family gathering?" The living room was filled with balloons and streamers. A massive, 7-tier cake sat on the dining table. Richard, Eleanor, Pierce, and Nikolai were all staring at me with deep annoyance. My sister, Alicia, sat in the middle of them like a princess, surrounded by her court. She flashed me a sweet, gentle smile. "Eleanor, it's fine." Maybe Chloe had something really important to do that held her up. Her sweet, understanding act immediately won silent nods of approval from the rest of the family. Nikolai sneered. What important thing could she possibly have? "My family has hated me since the day I was born." Eleanor was pregnant with twins. But my sister, Angel, was born weak. They believed I had stolen all the nutrients in the womb, which caused Angel to pass away less than 24 hours after birth. My parents dumped me with my grandparents. But before I even turned a month old, my grandparents died in a horrific car crash. From then on, everyone called me a curse. In my memory, Eleanor always looked at me with disgust, weeping over the baby clothes she had prepared for Angel. When I was 5, Richard brought a girl home from the orphanage. She shared the exact same birthday as me. That was Alicia. They showered her with all the love they would have given Angel, 10 times over. My mother is a top oncologist specializing in stomach cancer, yet I got terminal stomach cancer right under her nose. How ironic. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out at first. Finally, I forced out the same plea I had made 1,000 times before. "Eleanor, my stomach really hurts." Eleanor rolled her eyes, her face written with sheer disgust. "Here we go again. Stop acting. It's pathetic." The hospital report in my hand was so obvious, yet not a single one of them looked at it. Pierce threw me a cold glance. "Do you really have to fake an illness on Alicia's birthday just to steal the spotlight?" Nikolai clicked his tongue in disgust. "If Alicia hadn't insisted on waiting for you to cut the cake, we would have started hours ago." Alicia played along, smiling warmly at me. "It's okay, Chloe. I know you're not feeling well. Take care of yourself." Richard frowned and ordered, "How long are you going to keep up this tantrum? Get over here." I walked over and saw the elegant writing on the cake. "Happy birthday, Alicia." But today was my birthday, too. Alicia picked up the knife, cut a slice with her name on it, and handed it to me with a smug smile. "Happy birthday, Chloe." Her eyes were triumphant. My family was throwing her a massive party, completely forgetting it was my birthday as well. Or maybe they didn't forget. They just didn't care. Seeing me hesitate, Eleanor's voice grew sharp. "Is your hand broken? How long are you going to make Alicia hold that plate?" The others glared at me as if I were actively torturing their precious darling. I took the plate and mumbled, "Thanks." Only then did they look away, returning to their laughter and leaving me in the cold. I stared at the cake with her name on it. I knew that if I didn't eat it, I would have to endure another endless lecture. Like a robot, I took a bite. Instantly, my stomach violently churned. I covered my mouth and rushed to the bathroom, throwing up into the toilet. Eleanor exploded. "Chloe, do you hate Alicia that much? You can't even swallow a single bite of cake she offered you without throwing a tantrum?" Pierce leaned back, his eyes narrowing. Are you going to complain about your stomach again? Stop trying to get attention. Nikolai stabbed his fork into the cake, his voice dripping with malice. If you're in so much pain, why aren't you dead yet? Keep playing your little games. Richard picked up my slice of cake and threw it directly into the trash. If you don't want to eat, don't. Ungrateful brat. I knelt by the toilet, vomiting violently, unable to reply. The physical reaction forced tears down my face. Their shouting echoed through the bathroom door, deafening and relentless. The double torture of my mind and body was driving me to the brink of insanity. I dragged myself up to my bedroom on the second floor, locking the door to shut out the noise. The moment I left, the living room downstairs resumed its warm, happy atmosphere. The medical report lay open on my desk, staring back at me. A sudden wave of panic hit me. The doctor's words from this morning echoed in my head. The tumor is metastasizing. It might put pressure on your optic nerve and cause blindness. You need to prepare for the worst. The next day, I went to school like normal. I had begged my parents countless times for sick leave in the past, only to be met with screaming matches. Nikolai had mocked me once. Your grades are already garbage. Now you want to skip school too. Richard had agreed. Look at Alicia. She actually makes us proud. Not like you, an absolute embarrassment. But they forgot that I used to have perfect grades. Back then, they had a completely different excuse to hate me. When the school posted the exam rankings, Alicia had looked down in tears. Eleanor had rushed to the school, slapped me across the face in front of teachers and students, and screamed, "You have to steal everything from Alicia, don't you? Even the top rank. Why couldn't you have been the one who died back then?" Eleanor was thinking of Angel. I had stood there under the judgmental stares of everyone, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. But Eleanor had grabbed my arm, launching into a screaming tirade, digging her sharp nails into my skin until I bled. In the end, my homeroom teacher had to physically pull her off me. After that, I stopped trying. I became the disappointment they always wanted me to be. Slap. I was knocked to the ground. Chloe, I'm talking to you. How dare you ignore me? A popular girl, Kate, stood over me, flanked by a dozen classmates. Alicia stood right next to her, pretending to play the peacemaker. Come on, Kate. Chloe didn't mean to. She just really liked Scott. Alicia turned to me, looking incredibly forgiving. Chloe, if you liked him, you should have just told me. I wouldn't have started dating him. Kate scoffed, looking at Alicia with pity. Alicia, you are way too sweet. Why do you tolerate this homewrecker? Here we go again. My cheek burned from the force of the slap. I stood up and calmly brushed the dust off my clothes. I don't like him. Scott stepped forward, pulling out a crumpled love letter. He ripped it to shreds and threw the pieces in my face. You make me sick. I guess my last warning wasn't enough. Scott looked at the crowd. This time, don't hold back. They dragged me into the PE equipment room. And Alicia, just like every other time, stood outside with tears in her eyes, looking like the victim everyone needed to comfort. My old bruises hadn't even healed, and now new purple marks were blooming all over my body. This was the girl my family raised like a princess. She had been orchestrating my bullying for over a decade. I closed my eyes, biting my lip, refusing to make a sound even when the taste of copper filled my mouth. Bang! The heavy metal door slammed shut, plunging me into absolute darkness. I fixed my torn clothes, dragged myself up through the agonizing pain, and left a trail of blood on the floor. I pulled open the dusty curtains. The schoolyard was completely empty. I spat out the blood in my mouth, walked calmly to the corner of the room, and picked up a heavy metal wrench. I smashed the rusted lock on the window, shattering the glass. A jagged piece sliced open my wrist, and blood began to drip onto the sill. Ignoring the pain, I hauled myself out of the window. Stop right there. I turned. It was the newly hired vice principal. She pushed up her glasses in disbelief, letting out a sharp gasp. She dragged me straight to her office. After flipping through my file, she immediately called my father. She glared at me, her face tense. Why aren't you home? Getting into trouble at your age is one thing, but destroying school property? This is unacceptable. I looked down at my filthy clothes. Scott and his friends were smart. They never hit my face. They only targeted places hidden by my clothes. To the vice principal, I was just a delinquent. Yet, despite her harsh words, she poured me a cup of warm water and set it in front of me. I am going to have a serious talk with your parents when they get here. A few minutes later, sirens wailed outside. Pierce walked in with a couple of officers. The moment his eyes landed on me, his face twisted into deep annoyance. We received a call from the school about vandalism. I should have known it was you. I kept my head down, silent. The vice principal didn't know he was my brother. Afraid a criminal record would ruin my future, she quickly tried to smooth things over. Officer, she only broke the window to get out. Let's not file an official report. We can resolve this privately once her parents arrive. Pierce said coldly, I am her guardian. He turned to me, looking down his nose. Do you have any idea how much police resources you are wasting? I have every right to put you in a holding cell. I looked up at him, my voice flat. I know. I picked up the cup of water and drank it all. Did I want to fight back against the bullies? Of course I did. But every single attempt had failed. Pierce was a detective. He saved so many people, but never me. The very first time I was beaten up, I ran to him. I pulled up my sleeves to show him the bruises. He didn't even look up from his desk. Don't bother me with your petty high school drama, he had said. I thought he was just busy, so I went to the police station to file a report. But as I was taking off my jacket to take photos of my injuries for evidence, he walked in. Who are you trying to seduce? He had sneered. My cries for help were treated as disgusting attention-seeking. In the end, to teach me a lesson about wasting police resources, my righteous brother personally locked me in a holding cell for 15 days. Oh my God. Chloe, your hand is bleeding. The vice principal gasped, staring at the cup in my hand. She quickly grabbed a first aid kit and started wrapping my wrist in gauze. I looked up at Pierce, a tiny, subconscious glimmer of hope rising in my chest. For the first time, my wounds were laid bare right in front of him. Would he believe me this time? Pierce smirked, his eyes full of disdain. Don't waste your gauze on her. This self-harm act is getting old. If you want to die that badly, don't bother getting treated. He violently ripped the gauze off my wrist and dragged me out of the school. The pain in my wrist grew sharper, eclipsing the dull ache in the rest of my body. My blood dripped onto the pavement all the way to the car. My chest felt incredibly tight. I couldn't breathe, and my vision began to blur. When we got home, Alicia was sitting on the couch with my orange prescription bottle in her hand. She was eating the pills like candy and laughing, offering them to Eleanor and Nikolai. When she saw us walk in, she smiled sweetly and offered a pill to Pierce and me. Why are you taking my medication? I asked, my voice trembling. Alicia gasped in mock surprise. This is your medication? But they're just Skittles. She poured a few more into her hand. They're so good. No wonder you love them, Chloe. Honestly, as long as you don't get cavities, Eleanor and Richard won't care how much candy you eat. My heart froze. I didn't dare look at anyone else's expression. I slowly put one of the candies into my mouth. It was the exact same tablet I had been taking for the past 2 months. But I had lost my sense of taste weeks ago. Why were my cancer meds replaced with candy? Richard, Eleanor, Pierce, and Nikolai looked at me with smug satisfaction. Alicia just stood there, smiling triumphantly. Nikolai tossed a pill to Pierce. See? I told you she was faking. He popped one into his mouth and crunched it loudly. Eleanor sneered. You eat this much candy every day, yet you haven't developed diabetes? Honestly, that would be far more believable than your stomach cancer lie. Richard's face was dark, his voice dangerously low. I don't care if you want to play act a terminal illness. But if you ever interfere with Pierce's work again, I will personally have you committed to a psychiatric ward so you can experience what real patients go through. I looked at Pierce. He didn't say a word, but his cold expression showed he fully agreed with Richard. The cruel, ugly faces of my family began to warp and blur. I pushed past them, stumbling up the stairs in the dark, desperate to lock myself in my room. Alicia followed me up, holding the pill bottle out to me. Chloe, what's wrong? Are you dizzy? Can you not see the stairs? Nikolai pulled her back from behind. Why do you even bother with her, Alicia? Her little stomach cancer lie got exposed, so now she's playing the dizzy card. It's exhausting. My hands shook violently as I finally slammed the door shut and locked it. As the days passed, my vision decayed further. People became nothing but blurry shadows. Headaches, vomiting, and chest pain became my daily reality. I had fought so hard to survive for 18 years, hoping to legally cut ties with them once I became an adult. I was only a few months away, and then I got cancer. I returned to the hospital for a checkup, only to run into Eleanor. Unbelievable. Are you so desperate that you're bringing your little drama to my hospital now? I had forgotten that she was rotated to this branch this month. I'm not doing anything. She stepped closer, her face contorted with rage. There is a limit to your lies. No doctor in this hospital would write you a fake report. Before I could answer, her sharp eyes scanned me up and down, making me feel naked and dirty. Why are you standing in front of the OB/GYN clinic? Don't tell me you caught some nasty STD from sleeping around at your age. Eleanor's screeching voice echoed down the corridor, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Only then did I realize I was standing near the women's clinic. Under the judgmental stares of the crowd, Eleanor continued her tirade. I don't have a slut for a daughter. You are absolutely nothing compared to Alicia. You act like you're half dead every day. Why don't you actually go die? Her venomous words sliced into me. I held out my medical report to her and said softly, but Eleanor, I really am dying. Eleanor's hand moved faster than my failing eyes could track. Clack. The medical report was knocked from my numb fingers, scattering across the polished linoleum floor of the hospital corridor. A few pages slid beneath the wheels of a passing wheelchair. Do you think I'm stupid, Chloe? Eleanor's voice sliced through the hum of the hallway, sharp enough to draw blood. She stepped forward, her expensive designer heels crushing the corner of the pathology sheet, the exact sheet detailing the 4.8 centimeter primary lesion invading my gastric mucosa. You print out some garbage from an online template, slap a fake stamp on it, and think you can humiliate me in my own place of work. I blinked, trying to clear the milk-white fog threatening to engulf my field of vision. She was just a dark, vibrating silhouette against the harsh fluorescent lights. I didn't fake it, I whispered. My throat was dry, tasting of rust and stomach acid. Eleanor, look at the signature. It's Dr. Harrison's. Your colleague. Dr. Harrison is on sabbatical in Zurich, she snapped, her face twisting into a mask of pure disgust. You couldn't even get your lies straight. You looked up. The board of directors picked a name and thought I would know? She didn't know. She didn't know Dr. Harrison had returned 3 weeks ago, specifically to handle complex, untreatable oncology cases. She didn't know, because for the last month, her entire schedule had been cleared to prepare Alicia's medical school recommendation letters. A few nurses paused at the nurses' station, whispering among themselves. They knew Eleanor, the brilliant, compassionate Dr. Vance who wept with patients. Families in the waiting rooms. They looked at me with cold disapproval. Look at that delinquent daughter, harassing her saintly mother at work. Get out, Eleanor said, her voice dropping into a dangerous, icy register. If I see you near this clinic again, I will have security escort you to the psychiatric ward. Your father was right. You belong in a padded room. She turned on her heel and walked away, her white coat billowing like a shroud. I didn't bend down to pick up the papers. My knees wouldn't support the movement. Anyway, I turned and walked toward the sliding glass doors. The sunlight outside didn't warm me, it felt like pinpricks of ice on my skin. As I stumbled down the front steps, my foot missed the bottom curb. I pitched forward, bracing for the hard impact of the concrete. A strong grip caught my arm, stabilizing me before I hit the ground. Hey, careful. I looked up through the haze. It was the teenage boy from yesterday, the one I had bumped into. He was wearing a simple denim jacket, holding a paper bag from a nearby pharmacy. He looked at my face, then down at my trembling, bruised hands. His eyes softened with a look I hadn't seen in 18 years. Pure, unadulterated concern. You look really pale, he said gently, not letting go until he was sure I could. Stunt. Did you just come from oncology? No. I choked out, a bitter laugh bubbling up in my chest. I was just visiting my mother. He paused, glancing back at the grand hospital banner bearing Eleanor's name as a chief contributor. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he pulled a warm bottle of tea from his bag and pressed it into my cold hands. My sister was in there for 6 months, he said quietly. I know that look. Don't go home alone if you can help it. I don't have a home, I said softly. He looked startled, but before he could respond, I turned and walked toward the bus stop. I didn't drink the tea. I held it against my chest, using its faint warmth to keep my heart beating just a little longer. My next stop wasn't the Vance estate. It was a modest law firm nestled in a quiet alley 3 blocks from the municipal court. Mr. Wright, a middle-aged attorney with tired eyes, looked at the documents spread across his desk. He looked from the papers to me, his brow furrowing deeper with every second. Miss Vance, he said slowly, are you entirely sure about this? You are legally dissolving all family ties. You are waiving any right to inheritance, any future financial support, and he hesitated, checking the final clause. You are revoking their rights as next of kin regarding your medical decisions and post-mortem arrangements. Yes, I said. My vision was swimming, the edges of Mr. Wright's desk turning into jagged charcoal strokes. I want it completely severing. If I die, they are not allowed to claim my body. They are not allowed to host a funeral. You are only 18, Mr. Wright said gently. This is very extreme. Is there abuse involved? I can contact the authorities. My brother is Detective Pierce Vance, I interrupted quietly. My father is Richard Vance, senior partner at Vance and Sterling. My mother is Eleanor Vance. Who would you call, Mr. Wright? The lawyer froze. The name Richard Vance carried enough weight in the city to crush any independent firm overnight. A look of profound pity crossed his face, followed by helplessness. I see, he murmured. He pulled out a pen and slid the thick document toward me. Sign here. We will keep the original in our safe. Once signed by your legal guardian or executed upon your death alongside your medical records, it becomes legally binding. My hand shook as I took the pen. I signed my name carefully, Chloe Vance. There was only one line left blank at the bottom. Signature of legal representative/father, Richard Vance. He won't sign it while I'm alive, I said, staring at the empty line. He thinks everything I do is a stunt to get attention. But once I'm dead, he'll sign it just to erase my name from his ledger. I left the attorney's office and walked out into the gathering dusk. When I opened the front door of the Vance home that evening, the smell of roasted lamb and rosemary filled the foyer. Laughter echoed from the dining room. Nikolai was telling a story about a bizarre case at the morgue, his voice light and animated. Richard was chuckling, a low, rare sound of contentment. Alicia was giggling, her voice like silver bells. I didn't try to creep upstairs quietly this time. I didn't have the strength to lift my feet high enough to avoid the creaky third step. Thump. My heavy winter coat slipped from my shoulder and hit the hardwood floor. The laughter in the dining room instantly vanished. Chloe? Richard's voice boomed down the hallway, stern and demanding. Get in. Here. I walked into the dining room. My eyes were so bad now that the chandelier above the table looked like an exploding star, spraying painful bursts of light into my retinas. I couldn't distinguish their features anymore, just four dark shapes, seated around a grand table, with Alicia sitting at the center, glowing in a pale pink dress. Your mother told us about your little performance at the hospital today, Richard said, setting his wine glass down with a sharp clink. Interrupting her. Work, faking medical records, trying to embarrass her in front of her colleagues. Have you lost your mind entirely? I didn't fake anything, I said. My voice sounded hollow, echoing in my own ears like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Shut up, Pierce snapped from the corner. He stood up, towering over me, his broad detective's frame casting a shadow that blocked out the chandelier light. I spoke to the precinct chief today. The school principal called again about the window you broke yesterday. I had to use my personal influence to keep them from filing criminal charges against you. He took a step closer, pointing a finger at my chest. You are a menace to this family. You bully Alicia. You break school property. You waste police resources. And now you're harassing Mom at her hospital? What is wrong with you? Alicia's friends beat me, I said, looking directly into the dark smudge that was Pierce's face. Scott ripped up a love letter I never wrote. They dragged me into the PE equipment room and kicked me until I couldn't stand. I broke the window with a wrench because they locked me inside in the dark, Pierce. I was bleeding. A silence fell over the room. Then, Nikolai let out a loud, mocking laugh. Oh, brilliant. Nikolai clapped his hands slowly. The PE room beat down. Classic. Chloe, do you know how many murder victims I examine a week? I know what human skin looks like after a beating. You walked out of that school with a scratch on your wrist from broken glass. Where are the bruises? Show us. They didn't hit my face, I whispered. They know better. Look under my shirt. I reached for the hem of my sweater, my fingers clumsy and numb. Stop it, Eleanor shrieked, slamming her fork onto her plate. Don't you dare. Strip in front of your brothers. You disgusting, filthy child. Have you no shame? My hands froze on the fabric of my sweater. She's lying anyway, Alicia chimed in sweet, innocent tones. Yesterday at school, Scott told me Chloe tried to kiss him behind the bleachers. When he rejected her, she threw a tantrum and threatened to hurt herself. I think she broke the window herself, just to blame Scott. Alicia sighed softly, reaching out to touch Richard's arm. Dad, don't be too hard on her. She's just confused. Richard's face hardened into stone. Enough. He looked at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated coldness. Tomorrow morning, I am calling Dr. Vance's associates at the Psychiatric Institute. You will be admitted for a 60-day evaluation. You will not attend school, you will not leave the facility, and you will not embarrass this family again. 60 days. I wouldn't last 60 days. The doctor had given me weeks, maybe days, before the internal bleeding became catastrophic. Okay, I said. Richard blinked, caught off guard by my immediate compliance. What? Okay? I repeated softly. I'll go. I turned around and began to drag myself toward the staircase. Chloe, wait, Alicia called out, her voice dripping with artificial sweet concern. She ran up behind me, holding out the small, orange pill bottle. You forgot your Skittles downstairs. You need to keep up your energy for tomorrow. She held the bottle out to me, smiling that bright, radiant smile that had stolen my parents' hearts 13 years ago. I looked at the bottle. Then I looked at Alicia. With my failing eyes, I couldn't see her exact expression, but I could hear the sharp, triumphant rhythm of her breathing. She knew. She had swapped the pills. Weeks ago. She knew I was dying, and she was feeding me sugar to make sure I died faster. Keep them, I whispered. You like them more than I do. What's that supposed to mean? Nikolai sneered from the table. She offers you a gesture of peace, and you act like a snob? Just take the damn candy and go to your room. I didn't answer. I reached out, took the bottle from Alicia's hand, and walked up the stairs. My bedroom was cold. I hadn't turned on the heat in months because the radiator hissed too loudly, making my raging headaches worse. I sat down at my small wooden desk. The room was almost pitch black now. To anyone else, the desk lamp turned on. High would be blinding, but to me, it was just a faint gray halo in a sea of shadow. My optic nerve was dying, compressed by the secondary tumor swelling in my skull. I pulled open the middle drawer. Inside was a thin, worn notebook. I opened it to the very last page. I couldn't see the lines anymore, so I pressed my index finger against the paper to guide my pen, writing by feel. To Richard, Eleanor, Pierce, and Nikolai. You always asked me why I couldn't be more like Angel. You said I stole her air, her food, her life in the womb. You said I was a curse that killed my grandparents. I spent 18 years trying to pay off a debt I never owed. Mother, you are a world-renowned expert on stomach cancer. You have saved hundreds of strangers. I hope when you read my autopsy report you remember every time I told you my stomach hurt. I hope you remember telling me my acting was pathetic. Pierce, you are a great detective. You locked me in a cell for 15 days because I tried to report my abuse. You told me my self-harm act was getting old. Look at my wrists now. Nikolai, you examine corpses every day to find the truth. When you open me up, I hope you look closely at my stomach. You'll find no food in there. Just the sugar from the Skittles Alicia replaced my chemotherapy with. Richard, you tore up my life. You will find the severance papers on my desk. Please sign the bottom line. It is the only request I have ever made that costs you nothing. Happy birthday to me, Chloe. I capped the pen and placed it neatly beside the notebook. Beside the notebook, I laid out 3 items. 1. The original, official late-stage gastric carcinoma report signed by Dr. Harrison, bearing the hospital's red wax seal. 2. The orange prescription bottle, half filled with bright pink and yellow Skittles. 3. The legal family severance agreement, drafted by Mr. Wright, leaving only the signature line for Richard Vance Blank. My stomach suddenly twisted with a white-hot, tearing pain. It was worse than anything I had felt before. It felt as though a blade was being turned inside my upper abdomen, slicing through blood vessels and tissue. I gasped, falling from my chair onto the cold hardwood floor. I clutched my stomach, pulling my knees up to my chest. A gush of hot liquid pooled in my throat. I couldn't stop it. I coughed and deep, dark crimson blood poured from my mouth, splashing across the floor, soaking into my white sweater. Vomiting blood. Dr. Harrison had warned me about this. Massive internal hemorrhage. Downstairs, I could hear music playing. Richard had turned on his favorite jazz record. The muffled sounds of laughter drifted through the floorboards. They were having dessert. Alicia was probably cutting another slice of cake. I lay on my side, staring into the dark. I couldn't see the light from the desk lamp anymore. Absolute darkness swallowed me whole. The pain was terrifying, but beneath the agony, a strange, profound peace began to settle over my chest. The suffocating weight that had rested on my shoulders since I was 5 years old was suddenly lifting. I didn't have to explain myself anymore. I didn't have to beg for sick leave. I didn't have to duck when Kate raised her hand. I didn't have to apologize for Surviving while Angel died. I closed my eyes. It's okay. I thought of the teenage boy's voice at the hospital steps.
It's okay.
My breathing slowed. The violent spasms in my stomach gradually dulled into a faint, distant throb. The coldness crept up from my feet, moving into my knees, my chest, my hands. The last thing I heard was the sound of my family laughing downstairs, while I died alone on the floor, soaked in my own blood. By 8 a.m. the next morning, the sun was bright and blinding. Downstairs, Eleanor was sipping her black coffee, reviewing a medical journal. Richard was adjusting his tie in the hall mirror, preparing for a high court hearing. "Pierce," Richard called out without looking around. "Go up and drag Chloe down. The transport van from the psychiatric center will be here in 20 minutes.
I
Don't want her making a scene on the front lawn." Pierce scoffed, adjusting his service weapon on his belt. "She's probably locking herself in the bathroom again, crying for attention. I'll break the lock if I have to." Pierce walked up the grand staircase, his heavy boots thudding against the carpeted steps. He reached Chloe's room at the end of the hall and knocked firmly. "Chloe, get up. Dad's waiting." No answer. "Chloe, don't play games with me," Pierce said, his voice hardening. "You have 30 seconds to open this door, or I'm using the master key." Silence. Pierce pulled the key from his pocket, shoved it into the lock, and turned it. With a sharp click, he pushed the door open violently. "I told you." The words died in his throat. The air in the room was freezing, carrying a heavy, metallic smell that hit Pierce straight in the back of his throat, a smell he knew all too well from crime scenes. The desk lamp was still burning, casting a dim light over the room. On the floor beside the overturned desk chair lay Chloe. She was curled into a tight fetal position, her knees pulled toward her chest. Her skin was a terrifying, waxy grayish-white. A massive, dark pool of dried, coagulated blood spread out from her mouth, staining the floorboards and matting. Her pale hair. Her eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the wall. They were clouded over, covered in a dull, glassy film. "Chloe?" Pierce took a step back, his hand flying to his gun out of instinct, his heart leaping into his throat. "Chloe, stop it. This isn't funny." He dropped to one knee, reaching out to grab her shoulder. The moment his hand touched her, he flinched. She was as cold as ice. Rigor mortis had already set in. Her limbs were stiff, locked rigidly in her final posture of agony. "No." Pierce stumbled backward, knocking over a wastebasket. "No, no, no." He scrambled to his feet, bursting out of the room and running to the banister. "Nikolai, Eleanor, get up here now." His voice cracked, bursting into an uncharacteristic, shrill panic. "Get up here." Downstairs, Eleanor dropped her coffee cup. The porcelain shattered on the tile
floor.
Nikolai was the first to rush into the room, with Eleanor and Richard right behind him. Alicia hovered at the doorway, clutching her pink cardigan, her face
Pale.
"What is the meaning of this yelling?" Richard started, but the words froze in his chest as he stepped over the threshold. Eleanor gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Chloe." As a doctor, Eleanor's brain automatically tried to process the scene
Clinically.
But as she looked at her daughter's motionless body, logic collapsed into chaos. Nikolai sprinted forward, dropping to his knees beside the pool of dried blood. His fingers automatically went to her carotid artery.
Cold. Hard.
No pulse. "She's dead," Nikolai whispered, his voice trembling violently. His hands that had dissected hundreds of corpses without a single shake, were trembling so hard he couldn't keep them flat. "She's been dead for at least 8 hours." "What do you mean she's dead?" Eleanor screamed, rushing forward and shoving Nikolai aside. "Check again. Perform see. Nikolai, do something. She has rigor mortis, Mom." Nikolai yelled back, tears suddenly welling in his
eyes.
"Her blood has settled. Look at her eyes. She's gone." Richard stood frozen by the desk. His eyes darted around the room, desperately, looking for an explanation. A bottle of pills? A rope? A note saying she did this to hurt them? "She committed suicide," Richard said, his voice sounding hollow, terrified yet trying desperately to maintain control. "She took something. She did this to punish us." "She didn't take pills, Dad," Pierce said quietly. He was standing near the desk, his eyes fixed on the items laid out neatly beneath the lamplight.
His
breath came in ragged, shallow hitches. "Look." Richard walked over with unsteady steps. Laid out side by side were 3 things: the medical report, the pill bottle, the severance papers. Richard picked up the medical report first. His eyes scanned the letterhead. Department of Oncology, St. Jude University. Hospital. Patient name, Chloe Vance. Age, 18. Diagnosis, poorly differentiated. Gastric adenocarcinoma, stage 4. Extensive metastasis to abdominal lymph nodes. And optic chiasm. Prognosis, terminal. Estimated survival, 2 to 4 weeks. Attached to the back was a thick stack of monthly scan results dating back 6 months. This is fake, Richard stammered, his fingers crumpling the edge of the
Paper.
Eleanor, you said it was fake. You said she made it up. Eleanor snatched the paper from his hands. Her eyes raced across the pathology. Codes. The signature of Dr. Harrison, the histologic images showing severe ulcerated tissue necrosis. Her knees buckled. She hit the floor hard beside Chloe's body, the papers fluttering around her. No. Eleanor whimpered, pulling her hair with both hands. No, Harrison was in Zurich. He was in Zurich. He returned 3 weeks ago, Eleanor, Nikolai said, his voice dropping into a terrified whisper. He picked up the orange prescription bottle from the desk and unscrewed the cap. He poured the contents into his palm. Dozens of bright, sugary Skittles rolled across his hand. Nikolai stared at the candy. His mind flashed back to last night, to his own voice echoing in the dining room. If you're in so much pain, why aren't you dead yet? Keep playing your little games. He flashed back to his text message from 3 weeks ago. Chloe, when I die, will you perform my autopsy to prove I wasn't lying? Nikolai, dirty. A harsh, choking sob tore from Nikolai's throat. He fell forward, pressing his forehead against the blood-stained floorboards next to his sister's cold hand. She wasn't lying. Nikolai wept hysterically, grabbing his hair. She wasn't faking. Oh God, she was bleeding to death inside. Because Chloe's death occurred under uncertified circumstances, standard protocol dictated a formal autopsy. Nikolai demanded to perform it himself. Pierce tried to stop him in the hallway of the city morgue. Nick, don't do this to yourself. Let Chief Miller do it.
No.
Nikolai shouted, his eyes bloodshot, his face gaunt. I called her a liar. I told her she was dirty. I have to see. Inside the cold, stainless steel autopsy suite, Chloe lay on the metal table. Without her clothes, her true state was laid bare beneath the intense shadowless lamps. Nikolai stood over her, scalpels laid out on the tray. His eyes trailed over her body, and every mark broke a piece of his soul. Her ribs protruded sharply beneath paper-thin, translucent skin. Her collarbones looked like fragile glass twigs ready to snap. Her hips were sharp, hollow
Points.
She weighed no more than 70 pounds. And then there were the bruises. Dozens of deep, purple, yellow, and black contusions covered her torso, her thighs, and her arms. Old bruises layered over new ones. Human shoe prints were visibly outlined in broken blood vessels across her ribcage. PE equipment room. Pierce whispered from the observation window, clutching his microphone. She wasn't lying about the bullies. Nikolai picked up the Y-incision scalpel. His hand trembled so violently he could barely hold the steel. When I die, will you perform my autopsy to prove I wasn't lying? I'm sorry, Chloe, Nikolai sobbed, wiping his nose with his forearm.
I'm
sorry. I'm sorry. He made the incision. When Nikolai pulled back the abdominal wall, the reality of Chloe's torment struck him like a physical blow. Her stomach was almost entirely destroyed by a massive, dark, necrotizing tumor that had eaten through the muscular layer, invading the liver and surrounding blood vessels. The inside of her gastric cavity was filled with nearly a liter of dark, clotted blood from a massive arterial rupture. There was no food in her stomach. None. The only thing Nikolai found dissolved in the blood sediment were small, colorful traces of artificial food dye, yellow dye number 5 and red dye number 40. The sugar coating from the candy. Chloe had been starving to death while her stomach digested itself, swallowing candy because her family refused to give her pain medication or food. Nikolai dropped his scalpel onto the steel tray with a loud clang. He collapsed onto his knees beside the autopsy table, wrapping his arms around his head, screaming in agonizing, hysterical remorse. His screams echoed off the tiled walls of the morgue, raw and unholy. While Nikolai was in the morgue, Pierce took a squad car and drove directly to Chloe's high school. His badge got him into the security room instantly. He shoved the head of security aside and pulled up the footage from 2 days ago, targeting the PE building corridor. What he saw made his blood run cold. On the screen, Kate and a group of 10 students dragged Chloe into the equipment
room.
Alicia stood right outside the door, watching with a cold, amused smile on her face. 15 minutes later, the group walked out laughing. Alicia casually adjusted her sweater, patted Kate on the shoulder, and walked away. 10 minutes after that, the camera caught Chloe crawling out of the broken window, her wrist severed and dripping blood onto the white wall, clutching her stomach in agony. Pierce rewound the tape. He zoomed in on Alicia's face.
There was no sweetness.
No innocent concern, just pure, calculating malice. Pierce slammed his fist into the monitor, shattering the screen. He drove home like a madman, running 3 red lights. When he burst into the living room, Richard and Eleanor were sitting on the sofa, in dead silence, holding the notebook Chloe had left behind. They looked like corpses themselves, hollowed out, aged 20 years in a single morning. Alicia was sitting in the armchair, crying softly into a tissue. Dad, I didn't know Chloe was actually sick. I thought she was just trying to get attention.
Slap.
The force of Pierce's strike sent Alicia flying off the armchair, crashing onto the rug. Pierce! Richard roared, staggering to his feet. What are you doing? You little monster! Pierce bellowed, his face contorted in rage, tears streaming down his cheeks as he pointed at Alicia. I checked the school. Security tapes. You watched them beat her. You organized it. You swapped her cancer medicine for candy. Eleanor slowly lifted her head, her eyes, filled with dead horror, fixed on Alicia. You swapped her medicine? Eleanor asked, her voice dangerously quiet. No, Mom, I didn't. Alicia wailed, clutching her bruised cheek, shrinking back toward the wall. It was a joke. She was always complaining about her stomach. So I thought. A joke. Eleanor shrieked. She lunged forward, grabbing Alicia by the collar, shaking her violently. She had stage 4 gastric cancer. I am an oncologist.
My
daughter died in agony because you fed her sugar while her organs were failing. You murdered my baby. Your baby? Alicia screamed back, her fake innocence suddenly shattering into desperate, ugly spite. She wasn't your baby. You hated her.
You called her a
curse every day of her life. You slapped her in front of the whole school when
she beat me in exams.
You told her you wished she died instead of Angel. I just gave you all what you wanted. The room went dead silent. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Eleanor slowly let go of Alicia's collar. She stepped back, looking at her hands. Why couldn't you have been the one who died back then? Eleanor had said those exact words to Chloe multiple times. In front of teachers. In front of her brothers. Eleanor let out a strange, choked sound, a mix of a laugh and a sob, and fell backward onto the sofa, clutching her chest as if she were having a heart attack. The next day, Mr. Wright, the lawyer, arrived at the Vance estate accompanied by 2 police officers and a representative from the medical examiner's office. Richard answered the door. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his hair unkempt. The mighty attorney looked shattered. Mr. Vance, Mr. Wright said coldly, refusing to step inside. I am here on behalf of my late client, Chloe Vance. He pulled a legal folder from his briefcase and held out a document. This is the family severance agreement drafted by your daughter 48 hours before her death, according to her explicit instructions, alongside her validated autopsy report and medical records. This contract is now active. Richard's hands trembled as he took the document. It was the same paper he had shredded in the opening memory, the paper he had refused to acknowledge. Clause 4. The client, Chloe Vance, hereby revokes all rights of Richard Vance, Eleanor Vance, Pierce Vance, and Nikolai Vance to claim her bodily remains, host memorial services, or publish obituaries under the Vance family name. Clause 5. All personal belongings, medical documentation, and postmortem arrangements shall be handed over to the state-appointed public administrator. No, Richard whispered, his voice cracking. No, she's my daughter. I have to bury her. I have to give her a funeral. You lost that right, Mr. Vance, Mr. Wright said sternly. Chloe explicitly noted that she did not want a single member of this family present at her resting place. If you attempt to interfere, the public administrator will file a restraining order, and the cause of her death, including allegations of severe domestic neglect and medication tampering, will be released to the press. Richard fell to his knees on the front porch, clutching the document to his chest. Please, Richard begged, sobbing openly, pressing his forehead against Mr. Wright's shoes. Please, let me sign it now. Let me do one thing, she asked, please. He reached for a pen, his hands shaking so violently he couldn't write. He managed to scribble his signature on the bottom blank line. Richard Vance. It's too late for fatherhood, Mr. Vance, Mr. Wright said quietly, taking the signed document back. She left this world believing you hated her. A signature on a piece of paper won't change that. 6 months later, the Vance family home was silent. The bright, cozy lights that used to shine through the windows at night were
Gone.
the house was draped in permanent shadow. Alicia was gone. Pierce had personally reopened the investigation into the school bullying and medication tampering. Though she was a minor and avoided long-term prison, she was expelled, her reputation destroyed, and she was sent to a juvenile correction facility far from the city. Scott and Kate's families faced massive lawsuits and public disgrace. Eleanor resigned from the hospital. The board had launched an internal investigation into how a world-renowned oncologist failed to recognize late-stage gastric cancer in her own cohabitating daughter. Her medical license was suspended indefinitely. She spent her days sitting in Chloe's dark, empty bedroom, holding the small worn notebook, reading the final page over and over, until the paper was soft and stained with tears. She never touched Angel's baby clothes again. Nikolai quit his job at the morgue. He couldn't look at a scalpel without seeing Chloe's cold, thin body on the metal table. He moved into a tiny apartment, drinking himself into a stupor every night, haunted by the single word he had texted her: dirty. Pierce was demoted to desk duty after beating Scott's father in a public
Hallway.
He spent his night sitting in his patrol car outside the high school, staring at the PE equipment room window, remembering the little sister who had come to him with bruises on her arm, asking for help he never gave. And Richard. Richard sat in his grand office, staring at the legal severance paper framed on his wall, the paper bearing his own signature. He had tried to find where the state had buried Chloe, but because of the severance agreement, the records were sealed.
He didn't know which cemetery she was in.
He didn't know if she had a headstone. Every year, on her birthday, which was also Alicia's birthday, there was no cake, no balloons, no laughter. Just 4 broken people, sitting in a silent, freezing house, listening to the rain fall outside, forever trapped in the hell of knowing that the curse was never Chloe. The curse was them.